This session is just a recording to cover a lesson that was done on the 28th of the 7th. If you missed that lesson, you can watch this video. It's not edited. It'll be long and sort of drawn out, so I recommend you can speed up the play speed, you can fast forward, whatever. But basically the aim of this lesson is our first sort of tentative steps at building a website. Now the website that we're going to try and recreate is this one that I've already built here. So you can either look at that yourself if you go to this URL that you can see on the video, or at school this website's actually blocked. So I've posted up the source for the website. You can download it and open it on your hard disk. However you do it, you'll need to have access to the website so that you can have a look at it and work out how it's working. And so let's begin. So this is the website. And when we look at websites and how we're going to design them, we're looking for blocks or chunks of information that are what we're going to use to define the page. So when we look at this page, we want to find the chunks that are involved in building it. And we can see that there's quite a few pretty obvious rectangles. So there's this chunk here. There's this chunk here. And then there's this sort of rectangle down here. And so we have some predefined names in HTML to define these areas. This would be the header, this would be the navigate and the nav bar, and this would be the main. So header, nav, and main. We'll go over those again shortly. Other things that you look for when you're looking at this thing is you would scroll, and as soon as you scroll you can see that the top two lines are stationary. That's pretty important and will figure into our design as well. And finally, there's an aspect to websites that we haven't discussed yet, but it's responsivity. And responsive means how well does your screen handle changing size. And so you can see if we squish or squash the screen down here, you can see that this thing here, this nav bar, is reconfiguring itself pretty well. The title is doing pretty well. So everything's doing well. And it's not until we get down to this side here, size here, that things start going wrong. The font's too big and things don't fit. So it's partially responsive. It could be coded to be fully responsive, but we're trying to keep it simple to start with. So this is what we're looking at trying to accomplish, just partially responsive, having this thing shrink down as the page gets smaller. Other things we might note is that as we increase the size of the page and reduce it, you'll see that the actual size of the main, the width of it, doesn't change. Okay, it's not getting wider and thinner, so we need to keep that in mind as well. So with all of that into consideration, and we'll come back to this obviously, let's go into Visual Studio Code and let's start coding. So we're right at the beginning here. I always like to open a new folder, so we're starting directly from scratch. Go to wherever you keep your websites, and I go to my folder where I keep all my websites. I right click, I go new folder, and I'm going to call this website 3, and I select that folder. We get an empty page, obviously, so we create a new file called index.html. We take advantage of Emmet and we type exclamation mark. If Emmet doesn't come up, it means you've probably gone so fast that Emmet hasn't had a chance to load. Give it a couple of seconds. If it still doesn't work, restart Visual Studio Code and that usually fixes it. So exclamation mark, enter. You get like the empty template for a web page. Let's create a new page while we're at it, and we'll call it mystyle.css. So as I mentioned last lesson, we want to have all of our CSS code or styling information in a separate external file. You can do it so that you can put internal or inline CSS in an HTML file, but for our purposes, we're going to keep everything external. So the next thing, we might put a hello world in here just so that we know something's going on. We'll have a look at it with the preview. I'm using Microsoft, the extension. If you don't have that option, it is Live Preview by Microsoft is what's doing that. Okay, so hello world comes up nicely. Now let's check that our styling is working. Let's go into the styling, and I might close this getting started, and let's say body, background color, red, and hopefully our document turns red. It doesn't. Why doesn't it? We're thinking, well, because we haven't linked our HTML to our CSS. We need to do that. So we go into the head section, right? So it's got to be in this part of your document before the head comes up. We create a new line, we type in link, press tab, and then straight away just start typing the name of your style sheet and just press tab to complete it, and you'll see, okay, it's working. So that means our preview's working and our style sheet's working, so we can start working from here. So let us change that because it's pretty distracting. We'll change it to beige or something like that. All right, now let's go back to our original. We'll go back and forth to the page we're trying to model, and we'll just have a think about what we're doing again. So remember we said that there were there were the 3 sections. So there's this section, and this section, and this was the header. So here is the header, here is the nav, and here is the main. So let's just go into our CSS straight away, into our HTML, sorry, and just code 3 sections. Sorry, not a good start. Header, tab, and I just put an empty line there. And next section was nav, tab, empty line, main, tab, empty line. Okay, so we've got space to put our information. So at the moment we don't have any information. We've got areas where we can start storing that information. So on the header, we've got some text here for a start, which we can just copy and paste. So if we copy that, Control C, and we go in here and we put something in, we've got some text in our header. Obviously we're going to have to style it, but that's a good start. In our main, we've got a whole lot of ipsum lorem, and in Visual Studio Code you can generate ipsum lorem by typing in lorem and then the number of letters, the number of words. Now I want a lot of words because I want the screen to be certain it's going to scroll. So I'm typing lorem 1000, which is a lot. Okay, so we got a whole bunch of text there, which is great. And just for appearance's sake, I'm going to break it into some paragraphs. So the way I normally do that is Alt Z to turn my auto wrap off. And I'm literally just choosing random chunks of and typing Alt W. Alt W wraps it in a paragraph header. So I'm just breaking up that huge chunk into lots of paragraphs. Just so it looks a bit better. And now I'm kind of sick of doing paragraphs, so I'm just going to do one big chunk. Okay, and our end result is page with a few paragraphs in it. Probably the other thing we do is go back up the top. We can probably turn our wrap off so that it makes it a little more tidy. Go over here, and if we scroll up we can see that there's a title, so we might put a title in there as well. That's in the main. So we type in my title and we highlight it and we go Alt W and we'll make this level H2. So that means it's heading level H2. this thing in my header here is probably an H1. So I'm going to go Alt W, H1. Okay. All right, so we've got something in this and in this. Now I know one class did this and one class did not, but yesterday we talked a little bit about ordered lists and things like that, and we'll do that again. We'll review ordered lists. But basically, if you've got a navigation bar and you've got a whole bunch of links or pretend links, not all of these links work, what they usually do is they actually create an unordered list, and then in each of the unordered lists they put a link. So we're going to do that strategy. So what we can see here is that we've got our navigation bar. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 links. Okay, so in our nav bar, we're going to take advantage of Emmet to sort of a shortcut for typing a whole bunch of stuff out. You can manually type it out if you want, but Emmet makes things a bit easier. So we want an unordered list, a UL, and then inside that unordered list we want a list item, and we want 6 of them. So we do *6, and then inside that list item we want an anchor. Now some of you know this, some of you don't. An anchor is simply like how to link from one page to another. Okay, they called it the A or the anchor tag, and that's how you do it. You'll see it in a minute. So if you press enter to this, it generates a whole bunch of code, and like I say, you could have typed this out quite okay with copy and paste. It would work just fine. That's just a bit of fancy Emmet stuff to make a bit of a shortcut. Okay, so we can do another shortcut with Emmet. We can, if you put your cursor in here in that quotes there, and you press down Alt and Control and then down arrow, you can select multiple positions and you can type in multiple places at the one time. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to type in hash. So the hash is like, it's a placeholder. So actually, once we know where the links are going to go, once we create some more pages, we'll actually link them in here. But for the moment, we don't have any more pages to link to. So we're just going to put hash in all of those. Now, what we want to put in here, oops, what we want to put in there is the actual text. So in our case, a lot of them say test. So I'm just going to type in test here. And you can see that a whole bunch of tests come up. And done. That's as easy as that. So obviously it's blue and it's underlined, and there's the bullet point. That's all styling, okay? And in fact, maybe we'll do that first. Maybe we'll just change that styling first because it's pretty easy to change. So let's go in here. And so another thing that I notice when I look here is that there's a sans serif font. So this is some sort of sans serif font, or the whole page. So by default, I'm going to go font, family, some sort of sans serif font. You can choose whichever you like. Just choose the first one that comes up. Okay. So now let's have a look at getting this nav bar done first. So we've got all these links at the moment. In fact, let's make it a bit more accurate. So we've got the word cat, then 3 tests, and then and then beautiful for some unknown reason. So let's go in and change this to cat, and then 3 tests, and then I think it was is beautiful or something like that. Something like that, okay? So that's the content. So now we can start styling it. So this is a UL, and it's in the nav area. So what we can do to specify that is, first of all, we might put a comment. We might say styling navigation bar. So you can type in text in any file, any sort of file, and go Control K, Control C, and it turns it into a comment. Now a comment means that it will be ignored by the computer when it's rendering the file. It's purely for documentation for humans to read. So we're styling the navigation bar, and the first thing we're going to do is start to tidy these links up so that they look a bit more like this. So we need a blue background with white text, which we'll get onto in a minute. The first thing we might try and do is get rid of these dots, because we definitely don't want those. So if we go Nav and then we go OL, what we're doing is we're referring to UL, sorry, not OL. So we're referring to this thing here. So I should make that UL. So we're trying to configure the unordered list. You can go style, list style, none. And that gets rid of the dots at the beginning. So that's the first thing. The second thing we want to do is we want to change the color of these things. Okay, now these are anchor tags. Now once again, we only really want to affect anchor tags at the moment in the nav area, because that's the only part we're editing. So once again, I type in nav, so we're only referring to that area, and then we can go A for anchor, and then we can style them basically. And so we want to make the color of white, and they go white, and we want to make a background color of blue, and that looks pretty good. Now the other thing we want to do is get rid of the underline, and that is a line font style, I think. No, I can't remember. So what I would do is I'd go for a search. I'd say something like CSS anchor remove underline. So somebody's already searched for it. And go to the first one. And text decoration, none is what we're after. So let's try that. Text hyphen decoration tab NONE. And sure enough, it's gotten rid of the underlines. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to make these options go horizontally rather than vertically. So let's have a look at the original again. And these are rather nicely spread across the entire nav area. Now whenever you see things spread evenly across a whole area, especially when they are sort of responsive, so that they respond well to shrinking and expanding, it's probably a nav. Okay, they're probably relying on a flex box. They're probably relying on a flex box to do that for you. So what you do is you have to think, okay, what are the items that I want to be displayed? And in our case, there's cat, test, test, test. So let's look at our code and HTML. And we can see that the cat, test, 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 they're all contained in this list item. So what we want to say is that these list items, we want to be displayed horizontally. So we have to go to the parent and configure the parent. So in this case, it'll be the UL. So we've already got some coding for the UL. So we're going to add another thing. We're going to go display : flex. And you can see straight away it has a dramatic response. It's put everything horizontal, but it's done it in the most compressed way it can. And what we really probably need to say is we probably need to force things to be a bit wider. So let's actually configure our nav for a start. And let's go width : 100%. Good. And in the nav UL, let's go width colon 100%. Okay. What's holding us back there? Nav, UL, okay. Okay, so at the moment, the only thing that's blue is the anchor tabs, but we want the whole of the nav bar to be blue. So let's change that. So background color, blue. And you can see now that it's got a width of 100% and background color is blue. It's going right across. The critical thing we're missing now is, I think we can get rid of that. Yep, we can get rid of that. We can go justify content, and now we have several options that we can experiment with, or you can look up online and see what they mean. But there's space around, there's various other ones. We'll just leave it at space around. You can jiggle around and get that looking a bit better. The one thing that I don't really like, there's a big gap here, and there's a tool, there's an inspector that will help you actually work out why it's leaving such a gap. So I think if you go Control-Shift-I, maybe, or maybe not. Anyway, if you click up on the hamburger menu here and you go Dev Tools, try and make my screen a bit smaller. I can click on elements, try and work out what is holding that space, and this, whatever this is, looks like it's holding the space. So if I hover over cat, you can see that there's no space being held up there. But if I hover here and I click, it will actually select the line in my code. So it's the UL tab itself. So the UL tab has got space there, and if we scroll down we can see this thing here, and we can actually, I haven't got my mouse down, I'm just hovering over these. If I hover over these areas, you can see it's putting color where this thing applies. So I suspect that because we've got a margin, that margin of 16 is sitting here, and that's what's filling it up. So I think if we change our margin on the UL, it may help. And it doesn't. Interesting. Have a quick look. If we can't find it, we'll just leave it because it's not that important. We'll go back to it later. So once again, I'm looking. Looks to me like it is the UL. I can't see exactly why that space is there, so I'm going to leave it for the time being, and we'll get back to it. We've got bigger things to do at the moment anyway. So one thing we need to do is, if we look at this original page, we can see that we really need some padding to make this thing a bit fatter. So around the, maybe we'll go around the list items. Just give it a bit more space. That looks a bit better. Okay, like I say, the justify content, there's various options here as well. So we can try space between. I have no idea what these do. Whatever, you can go and check them out. All right, let's have a look now at our title. So at the moment, we've got the text, but we don't have the logo. So luckily for us, the internet is very good at letting us sort of borrow images. So we can just go right click and we can go save image as. You need to save it into the same directory that's holding your current web page where your index.html is. So in my case, I'm going to not there, I'm not. I'm going to documents. It's kind of odd. let me get this right. My documents, and I'm going to websites, and I'm going to website 3, and I'm going to save it there. And when you do that, you can see it comes up here. So we need to include that image, and the way we do that is we go into our header section, probably put it at the left here, and you type in IMG. So it's not a link, it's actually an IMG, and just press tab. And then start typing out the name of the file, and it should eventually come up. And there you go. And straight away, it sends the whole page absolutely crazy. And that's because it's so huge. So we need to put some urgent, what would you say, styling on it so that it will shrink down. So we go to My Style. So up until now, we've been sort of styling the nav bar. Let's style the header. So let's type in styling header, Control K, Control C. And what we want is, if we have a look here, inside the header, there's an image. So let us style that. So header space IMG, and we can go width colon 100 px, and I think that's too big, so let's go 70 px. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, so we've got our image there now, and we've got the My Beautiful page there as well. So let's have a look at the original again, and we can see that the background is white and the text is black. So let's start putting some stuff in here. We can go, oh. Not really successful. Oh, I've only styled the image here. So this is in the wrong spot. So, pardon me. Let's grab that. Put that up here. Okay, so starting to go white. Not sure. Oh, what have I done here? Okay, you can see now because I left two braces, muck things up. Okay, so you can see I've got white and just obviously the color is already black, but I'm just going to make it, just set it as black. Okay, so that's not too bad. And what have I broken now? So you can see I've broken something here because it's all getting completely out of step here. So I've got header, I've got open, and I haven't got a close, so I need to put a close in. Okay, looks happier now. So when you see that red starting to come up, you know you've got problems. Something's not balanced. So in my case, I deleted a brace somehow. Some clumsy editing. All right, one thing you might notice is that there's a gap here. And good sort of practice, well, I reckon good practice is whenever you start a new web page, I create a body section and I go margin :0, and that just gets rid of that space. Okay. Now we've got our image, and we want some text to go beside it. So we could think about using a flex box, because flex boxes take things that are, they can change the orientation. They can go from column mode to row mode. But in this particular case, I think we'll do something different. And that's because if you remember, our header doesn't scroll. So I think we might use a position of fixed on him for this stuff. So let's have a look and see what happens. So what we can do is we're going to get header, and I think we've got an H1. This is an H1, right? So, okay. So for the header, we can go position. This is quite a dramatic change. So fixed. Okay. So the effect of position fixed is that it takes that element. So in our case, that whole header element, so this whole thing, and it effectively takes it, they say it takes it out of the flow of the page. So basically the rest of the page no longer knows about that. So it doesn't, you can see here that our menu, our nav has gone up and our text has gone up. That's because it's now ignoring this completely. And what it does is it just overlays completely over the top of everything else, and it no longer cares about what's below. So effectively you've got two layers, if you will. They're kind of like two layers, I guess you would say. So this is okay. What it means is we can scroll now and you can see that it only cares about the top of the page, of the viewport. It no longer cares about the top of this web page, which is fine. It's sort of what we want. We might want to put in something like width colon 100%. Okay, so it goes the full width. That looks about right. Semicolon. And that's all looking a lot better. What you can do is you can type in opacity colon 50%, and that lets you actually see through the top. So you can see that there's a whole bunch of stuff at the moment that needs to come down, that will come down once we get ourselves sorted out. But first of all, what we need to do is we need to put this My Beautiful Page over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to use position fixed again. We're just going to sort of tack it to the top of the page. So we're going to go header H1, and we're going to go position fixed. And so once again, that makes this thing just be untacked from the header completely. So the header now ignores it, and it just gets put over the top of whatever it's going to sit on. We can now position it though by using the top, left, right, and bottom descriptors. So we're going to go top 10 px. So that means put it 10 pixels from the top, which is by accident perfect, right? It's right in the center there. And now we want to center it. So what we can do is we can say left 50%. Well, if you can type, you can say that 50%. And it's tried to put it over here. Now, if you have a look, you'll see, if you look carefully, you'll see what's happening. It has put it at 50%. The problem is, so it's put it exactly halfway. The problem is it's tried to do it beginning at exactly halfway. Now there's a fix for this. I just usually copy and paste this. So let's go to the web and try and find it. Now I just remember basically if I type in CSS transform and center, I'll be able to find a page that lets me know how to do it. And the first thing that comes up is this, and I just copy it and paste it basically. Obviously copy didn't work. Try again. Okay, and so you can see it's centered it properly now. I might take out the y-axis because I don't really need that one. Okay, and so we've got it pretty much beautifully centered. So that's really quite nice now. And you can jiggle around with that, right? So you can make it, maybe you might make it a smidgen further to the right, so maybe 55% or something. It's your call. You judge how you want to set that up. But basically this thing here, this line here, it's allowing for the length of the heading that you're putting here. That's what it's doing. All right, so let us set the opacity of this back to 50%. And you can see underneath we've still got our nav, and it's still scrolling, right? So we need to do the same sort of thing to our nav as we did to our header, which is we need to set it position fixed. Okay. So let's go to our nav and say and once again it jumps out and just goes over the top. So once again it's like creating a new layer, if you will. And now we need to push it down the screen a bit. So we might go top colon 150 px. Bit too far. Not far enough, maybe. And so what's going on? So let us put our opacity back to 100. So it's not bad. This is it needs to go down a bit. It's looking good. Looking good. Okay, so that's not too bad. So another thing that I've noticed is that I've got a gap up here. So I've noticed that I haven't actually pinned my header to the top. So I haven't said anywhere, oh, the header should be right at the top. So I can go top colon 0 and that drags it right up, which is good. And now I need to drag my nav bar up a little bit. Maybe 100 now. Okay, and that looks not too bad actually. So that's looking pretty close. We could jiggle around with that a little bit, but basically looking pretty close. The next thing is, of course, that this text, the main text, is still underlaid over this. So the easiest way usually to get around that is, so let's do another section, styling main, Control K, Control C, and we're going to put main, and we can just put padding at the top to say, just leave space at the top here. So padding colon hyphen top colon maybe 150 px, and that should, okay, so that's brought this down, so we can now see our title, which is good. So we're almost there. We've sort of got almost everything. If we go and have a look at our original here, we're getting really close now. So we can see we've got this and this. I think our header needs to be a bit taller. So let's make the header height I don't know, 100 px, what happens? Well, that's too small. 200? 150? That didn't seem to work well. Why is that? That's 100. 120. Okay, we need to push the nav down now to 120, I guess. Okay, that's a bit better. All right, so we look at this. Yeah, this is bigger. Much better. Okay, so we need to do some of the same tricks that we did to put this in place, to put the image in place. So the header image, position fixed. And we can go from the top, we need maybe an offset of, I don't know, 10 px. Yeah, not too bad. And from the left, an offset of 10 px. Yep. So, yep, not too bad. So that's good. So that's pretty much finished all that stuff. Now let's get the main sorted out, because the main, we need to do a couple of things. First of all, we need to restrict it to a certain size. So when the screen goes wider, the text doesn't get wider. It doesn't fill the whole screen. So we need to limit that. So what we need to do is we need to set the width of the body. So, of the main. So let's set a width of 800 px. Total guess. Maybe too wide, so maybe 700. Maybe 600. Okay, now you can start to see that it's being restricted in size. So you can see here that it's not going the full width. We might make it 500 and be a bit more exaggerated. All right, that's good. Now we know that the color is white and the background is black, so we can do that. I always get that wrong. Not bad. And we know that this text should be centered. So there's a trick to do that. And I'll just tell you what the trick is. I'm not sure why it works, but I know that if you go margin colon 0 auto, it will center a block. Don't know why it does it. You just put it in and the block gets centered. Finally, when we look at this page, we can see that the outer margins are black. So maybe the default for this page should actually be color of black. So then the outside will be black. Need to be able to type. Okay. And actually the inner is a little bit lighter than that. So we might go to the main, and where we've got black, we might just use the color picker to make it a bit lighter. Lighten it up. Wow, you can pick the shade. Okay, so yeah, we've got the sort of effect. What we're missing now is, you see here, there's a big gap between this side here. This will be padding. So once again, you need to put some padding in here. So we might go padding. We don't want to change the top, but we do want to change the left and the right. So we might go padding left. That's a fairly big pad, whatever it is. It's a pretty big pad. We might make it 20. Yeah, all right. It's actually even bigger than that, but that'll do. And there we go. I think we've had a pretty good attempt at modeling this page. Our results are pretty close. We definitely look at this line here in the next lesson, but certainly as a preliminary, we're well on our way to having this page up and running. Hopefully this is helpful to you. Obviously we'll be discussing this in class, so it's worthwhile practicing doing this 1 or 2 times, and just the process of doing it will actually get you much more familiar with the CSS and the HTML. Good luck with everything. See you in class.